We are really excited to have Dan Taten and John Sinclair of Seven Movements Health with us today. They're going to be doing some wonderful presenting, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They have the ability to share anything on the screen that they might want to, but they're going to present here for the next little bit and walk us through what they've been doing for years to help people get better at physical activity, especially people that may not have had that really woven into the fabric of their lives. And they'll talk about what they do to help people overcome that. And then we'll do some Q&A, and we've got some exciting announcements to share with everybody. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dan and John, and I look forward to learning from you gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here. And John and I are just excited to be able to share some of what we've been up to for the last decade with an amazing group like this. So I think we'll start off just, I'll give a little introduction of myself. I'll let John do the same. And then Johnny, just pass it back to me, and we'll sort of jump into a little bit of a presentation. We love to turn these things into more of a discussion, so don't be afraid to interrupt us if a question pops into your mind. Or if you want to save it for the end, just drop it in the chat. That's totally cool too, and we'll hit some Q&A at the end. I do have a little mini presentation in the middle, but you'll find really quickly one thing that we do at Seven Movements is we try and take the complex and make it simple. And easy to execute on. And that's what movement snacking is really all about. So a little bit about me. My name's Dan Taten. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. I grew up a farm kid in rural Saskatchewan, kind of our Canadian Midwest, I guess you'd call us. And did all my schooling at the University of Alberta. That's where I met John, working at World Health Club as a personal trainer. And started Seven Movements with John back in 2013 when we published our first book. It was called Seven Movements to Keep You Gardening for Life. I'll share a little bit more about how that came about after Johnny does just a little intro on your background, John, and where you're coming from the exercise perspective.
Yeah, thanks for having us, folks. My name is John Sinclair, co-founder of Seven Movements. I've been a certified strength and conditioning specialist and personal trainer, applied functional scientist for the last 30 years. I've been an educator in the personal training world and fitness world for the last 25. And I'm also too from Saskatchewan, grew up as a farm kid as well. So it's like this collaboration of kids that didn't want to be on the farm, decided to go get degrees in physical education and sport. So that's where Dan and I cut our teeth together, and just happy to be here and share a little bit more with you guys about how the fitness industry has kind of gone off the rails a little bit, and it's left a lot of people behind. And so we're going to share with you how we've solved for that.
Thanks, Johnny. So I always like to start this before I do have a little slide presentation that we can work through pretty quickly. But I always like to share the story of Seven Movements and kind of how we came to be and how we came up with this concept of microdosing movement, and then over the last decade of kind of where we've taken it. So it really started in those first days of me working as a personal trainer. John was actually my director of education at the time, and I went to John with a problem, and I said, John, I love all this performance education I'm getting. I'm loving working with athletes. This is really fun stuff. But I'm really interested in, like, how do we get non-movers moving? How do we invite more people who aren't participating in our fitness space to dip their toes into the world of fitness? And John asked a really good question at that time. He's like, who do you have in mind? Who are you thinking of when you asked me this question? I said, well, my grandma. And he said, okay, tell me more. I said, well, grandma is a gardener. So I grew up on the farm. Grandma had a giant garden, and she loved it. She was a gardener, but she was at this age where gardening, this activity she loved doing, was becoming painful. It was becoming something she no longer loved doing. So she wasn't getting any movement at all. And I said, John, if I asked Baba to come into the gym to see me, she'd probably cuff me upside the head. Like, that's not happening. but could I create something for her that I could convince her, like, hey, if you do this before you go in the garden, it might make you feel a little bit better. John said, yeah, we'd probably create something like that. What if we gave her just like little bits of things to do throughout the day that would help her feel better in the garden, and a little bit of things she could do after she gets out of the garden that would just make her recover and feel better? Like, I bet I could convince her to do that. So that's how microdosing movement was born. But then I asked John, like, how many movements should we give her? He said, I don't know, 7. So that's how 7 movements was born. So no grand scientific background of why we called it 7 movements, just that John decided in the moment that 7 movements sounded like a good idea for my Baba to move in the garden. And so the company was born. We started this concept we call movement snacking. As I said, we wrote our first book on the concept. We digitized because we were 2013, 2014. So we started making movement snacking videos. And we really looked at this as an approach to exercise that would allow people to just start moving a little bit, right? An introduction to movement, a gateway drug to exercise is often what we call the movement snacking. And we actually took this to the College of Physicians in Canada, and they said, great idea, guys. We love this. Love to see some more research behind it. And I said, okay, how do we do research? So we actually found partners with Professor John Little and Marty Gabalda out of the University of British Columbia and McMaster University. And we've been now in a 6-year relationship with those guys as we clinically validate some of our movement snacking protocol. So it's been really cool to work in academia and with those super brains at the university who are now helping us show people how movement snacking can have a profound effect, not just on physiology, but behavior, and brain health is sort of what we're here to talk about today. So I think anything to add to my story there, John? Did I nail it?
No, right on the money, bud.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is just bring up just a small presentation that we built just for you guys. See my screen all right there, Eric? Thumbs up? Awesome. Got it. So we always look at movement snacking as movement is medicine. I think we all know this intuitively. All exercise professionals know this, but we also, the gap that we find in this space often is that we don't have any mechanisms to help the non-mover get started. We just say, hey, you need to exercise more. We kind of leave it at that. And they end up in a gym or they end up in a fitness class and they're like, what am I doing here? So we're going to talk a little bit about how microdosing movement not only protects brain health and transforms environment, but also makes the individual, gives them an opportunity to step into movement in a way they haven't done before. So we always say that the exercise paradox, the old models, you know, we've seen this a million times. Exercise needs to be difficult to be effective. I think we've busted that myth over time, but we can talk a little bit about that today if you disagree with us. And John and I have always had this discussion. The old model is like, hey, when we do exercise, for some reason, we just pegged it at 60 minutes. You know, we got to do an hour session of exercise. There's not really any rhyme or reason behind that other than, what the best reason we could come up with is that gyms needed to charge per hour for their personal trainers. So we decided that 60 minutes was a nice window of time to get someone exercising. So the reality really is when you sit for 23 hours or you're sedentary for 23 hours, the body enters a very distinct physiological state that affects your metabolic health, regardless of your working out. So the reason I bring up this to this group is quite often we're talking to groups of non-movers that just get it. They're just like, yeah, I'm not a mover at all. But we also talk to groups of people who say, well, listen, I exercise for an hour. Like that should make up for all my sedentary time. And we know the answer to that is no. We need you moving frequently throughout the day. We need you getting up and down. We need you to participate in movement breaks. So we at 7 Movements talk a lot about helping non-movers build movement confidence. And this might be interesting for those of you who work with people who lack movement confidence. Or we might even call it movement competence for some folks who just haven't been moving for a long time. They just don't have the literacy. So we always talk about the fitness industry taking the double black diamond approach. I'd love to, for the people who are on video here, how many of you have ever skied in your life? Anybody? These skiers? Okay. So you'll know that what we don't do when we're teaching someone to ski is take the chairlift up to the top of the hill to a double black diamond run, point their skis down the hill and say, good luck. Hope you make it, right? What will happen is they're going to get hurt. They're going to experience a lot of fear and they're going to end up quitting. And it's what we do in fitness. We take a non-mover, we throw them into a high intensity interval class. We send them into a 60-minute session with a personal trainer, and they're just not ready for it. So 7 movements is the bunny hill approach. And we focus on movement confidence first. And John's going to talk a little bit about how movement snacking helps build, how he's designed it and programmed it to help build movement confidence and help build movement skills. So start small and safe, build confident movers. That's the essence of movement snacking. Talked a little bit about our partners at University of British Columbia, McMaster. Right now, we've got studies going on in obesity, type 2 diabetes, and Parkinson's disease. Yeah, it's just exciting research. So anybody on the call that wants to participate in exercise research and sees an application of movement snacking to the audience they serve, let's talk. Johnny, I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your programming methodology from 7 Movements perspective. Why do you program movement snacks the way you do, and the impact it can have on total body physiology, but let's focus for this group a little bit on brain health.
Sure. So one of the things that we know is that the more you exercise, the more plastic your brain becomes. And part of that, as we know, is not only the increase of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, but the beautiful thing about it is that we are, when it comes to movement, our body is constantly trying to negotiate gravity and ground reaction force. And so when we move in time and space, the beautiful part about it is that my body has to organize specific skills in order to complete a task. So in doing that, that's part of the neurodevelopmental sequence that allows me to get better at a particular motor task. So for example, when we don't come out of the womb and start running like certain mammals do, we have to go through this period of development that occurs that starts with locomotion, but it first starts with specific postures that the body has to go through, such as lying on your stomach and lifting your head off the ground. That starts to stimulate the brain and the spinal cord. And so as soon as I get into a prone position and lift my head up, that gravity is stimulating the growth that's happening at a very young age. And then it transitions into slithering. We slither before we crawl. Then we crawl before we try to balance on 2 feet. Then we stand up. Then we begin to walk. Then we begin to run and do a lot of our bipedal exercises that help us negotiate the world. Now, how it relates to the brain is all those steps, even though we don't think about what's happening in the brain, all of those synapses that are happening in the brain are doing so because it's related to our environment. And oftentimes we don't put ourselves in our environment that will allow us to grow the brain, as we tend to want to find safe environments that tasks are very simple for us to do. And what happens over time is the less active that I am and the less I challenge the brain to be able to rehearse those motor skills, then I end up losing those motor skills and I lose capacity, whether it's capacity at the joint or capacity in the muscular system, the fascial system, or even the nervous system and how it communicates throughout the body. So what we do at 7 Movements is we teach motor skills again. And we do it in a way where we think of your body's capacity for movement as being a bubble. I like to say it's a sphere of function. So the sphere of function is everybody has their little bubble that they move well in. And in some cases, we move in certain directions, distances, and depths that perhaps maybe are outside my bubble, and we do it either with poor rhythm and timing, we're maybe not symmetrical, and it doesn't really allow us to gain confidence. What we do is we teach these snacks in small ways that if you're mirroring me, the coach, doing it, I'm keeping you within a bubble that just improves your rhythm and timing. And over time and constant repetition of doing it frequently throughout the day, you start to enhance the brain's response to that pattern and bring those synapses back to connect again. And so that's where just basic movement literacy improves brain health. Now, there's lots of other things that we do in our programming, such as different brain activation strategies, like in trying to activate the vestibular system, which, because we don't challenge our vestibular system or our righting reflexes towards the horizon and towards gravity in the ground, is often we lose that over time. So there are little challenges that we put into our programming, such as doing a forward lunge while rotating the head at the same time. So challenging your brain within that bubble to spatial recognition. And so there's little sneaks that we put in there that we call little tweaks, that are just simple little things that we can do to challenge people. And it might be stepping forward, reaching your arms overhead, and at the same time driving your eyes to the back of your head. Those little things in there now start to get the brain to have to react differently to us in time and space. And so we do these in small little doses that start to ladder and aggregate up into better health outcomes over time. So that's kind of how we organize our programming, or the philosophy behind it, and why we organize our programming this way. It's all about skill acquisition, and it's all about getting better at completing larger motor tasks that ladder up to better health outcomes over time.
Thanks, John. So next I have a slide here that says we're going to walk through a 2 to 3 minute little movement snack. So love for you to give us something to make us feel better here in the moment, and show the folks on the call what a 2 or 3 minute little blob of movement can do for your body and your mind.
So if you guys want to join in with me, what we might do is we'll do a little challenge for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how effective one of our 7 movement strategies, which we call the rub and scrub, can be effective to improving joint motion. So what we'll have you do is just find a comfortable stance. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just sit down like you're going to sit into a chair, or just like you're doing the motion or the action of the squat. So we do that a few times, get a sense for what it feels like in the knee, maybe in the lower back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to employ a hydration strategy. So you're going to take your hands. I'm sure I'll be dating myself, but Mr. Miyagi would do this, and he'd create a little bit of heat in his hands. Well, that same idea of creating friction, I want you to put your hands over top of your knee, put a little pressure into it, so you're pushing at least hard enough where you feel some heat going into your knee. And we're just going to scrub over the outside of the knee. And with my fingers, I'm going to go right over that patellar tendon on my one side. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to step back, and we're going to try that squat again. And we're going to see what that feels like in that knee. And you should maybe drop a line in the chat if that felt better on that one knee. And if we don't do the other one, you're going to be walking in circles. So we hit it again. And we scrape the other side. Doesn't take too long to create some heat there and pressure and drive some fluid to that space. And then we go ahead and we try another squat. And that should feel like you gained a little bit of space at the knee. Now we can do the same thing for your lower back. You take your knuckles and you rake right across the sacrum bone. It's that triangle bone that goes right there. Let's rake that up and down. Go side to side, up and down, side to side, and then retry your squat. And you probably felt that you gained more space in the motion and allowed you to travel at greater depths, i.e. we increased your bubble there in just 2 simple little strategies there that we call the rub and scrub. Dan?
Thank you, John. Maybe give a little explanation of exactly what's happening when you do the rub and scrub, just because we get some folks on the call, I'm sure, are interested in that.
Yeah, physiologically, what we're doing is we're trying to drive fluid to the area. So if we think of friction and heat, when I drive friction and heat to the area, there's a lot, the technique is, technically, we call it osteofascial technique. But what we're doing is when I drive pressure and heat into an area, at the nervous system standpoint, the nervous system receives that as safe. And you know, like when you smash your shin on the coffee table, what's the first thing you do? you rub it, right? So you're stimulating the sensory system. So that in itself is an activation strategy. With every sensory change that we have just from touch, we get a motor response change as well. So that's step number one. Step number two is when I'm rubbing a tissue, I'm going to drive fluid to the area. So if you think of your tissues themselves as being like little tubules, at the microscopic level, we're pushing water into them. So it's like turning on the garden hose. When I drive fluid directly to a tissue, that creates an increase in hydrostatic pressure, and that creates, on the outside walls of the tissues, that creates expansion. So essentially what we've done is we've created lift right at that particular joint. So if I can create lift at that joint from it being compressed from our sitting on our butt all the time, what will happen is when I got lift there, then my joint is going to be where we call its most instantaneous axis of rotation. It's at its optimal position. And when that happens, that allows for freedom of motion at that joint. The other thing that happens is when I create friction and I drive friction into that tissue, is you get a piezoelectric charge that happens at the molecular level. What that does is that helps melt the extracellular matrix, which gets sticky between your legs, right? You feel like, you'll notice this when you're on a plane or in a car for a long time. You get up and you try to move and you can't really move. And then you just get moving, and then those tissues start to glide a little bit better. So it helps melt those little gluey, sugary substance called extracellular matrix that lays down between those tissues. So that's another benefit to it. And then the third one, of course, is just if my brain is interpreting that I'm moving with a better quality of motion, I feel more safe and secure. I'm going to want to do more motion. And then that's going to improve adherence. So from a behavioral, probably the most important part is the psychological aspect, is that if I feel better, I'm going to want to move more. And so that's the strategy. A few examples of what happens in a strategy such as osteofascial technique, or is like we like to simplify, as Dan said, and we call it rub and scrub.
Amazing. Thanks, John. And yeah, drop your questions in the chat if you have anything about that. But the reason I asked John that question after demonstrating is the way we deliver our programming nowadays is through something we just call monkey see, monkey do. So it's a video of the coach and you're just mirroring the coach. And we hide all of the intelligence really behind it. It's just like, follow John, you're going to feel better, right? This is the education layer that we layer onto this, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next part of the presentation. But the goal for us always at 7 Movements is, how do we make movement help you feel better? That's the outcome we're always trying to generate. It's not, how can we let movement help you lose weight? How can we help movement help you get a bigger booty or a bigger bicep? That's not what we're talking about. We're like, how do we make movement help you feel better? Because we know when movement makes you feel better, you're going to do more movement. And the gap out there right now is the 80% of people who are not participating in movement at all. It's not that people are moving wrong. It's that they're not moving at all. So we have to find ways to introduce them to this space, and movement snacking is a great way to help a non-mover get moving. I'll give the example of my dad, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's 4 years ago. He was obviously a farmer. I grew up on a farm, so he moved a lot. But when he was diagnosed, he kind of just stopped completely, just kind of sat and watched TV all day. And I said, Dad, like, would you try my movement snacking thing? He said, yeah, I guess it might maybe make me feel better. Little caveat, he has a metal rod in his back from me. I had a scoliosis diagnosis as a child, and they used to put a metal rod in your back because your spine was curving. So he's got all kinds of other movement challenges. But he started movement snacking. And the reason he continues to do it, he's our most frequent user on our platform now. He told me, he says, it just makes me feel better. That's why he's moving. So now that movement snack is turned into movement snack plus a little walk down the hallway, a movement snack plus a little walk outside. So that's what we're really trying to drive when we do this. And it's super important to know that. So Randy asked a really good question here for you, John.
Yep.
Does the rub and scrub have a weighted impact based on health or disease state? Take Parkinson's as an example.
Yeah, great question. So there are various forms of activation and various form that could be considered an activation. I think of it more as fluid dynamics. So if I can improve fluid in the body or move fluids through the body, I definitely get an outcome regardless of what your state is, whether it's a disease state or just your optimal performance state. So whether we're working with professional athletes or people with multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease, we tend to improve movement quality from a variety of different ways of doing this. And so what I shared with you guys was like 2, and I do 7 unique spots just for the pelvis alone to aid in gait or motion that involves the lumbopelvic hip complex. As far as Parkinson's goes, and what's really kind of cool, what we found out with Parkinson's is that there are different strategies that can involve rub and scrub that create a different sensory response. So Parkinson's is a disorder that I think of it more as an output disorder. The brain has a delay in the output in order to complete a particular motor task, right? So whether it's a tremor in trying to write a handwritten note, Dan and I had the opportunity to work with a focus group from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. We got a group, rather large group together. I think it was about 140 or 160 people. And on one call in particular, I think there's like 20 or 30 people. And we asked them to say, I said, what's one thing you guys
I told her
really
she
like?
could.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, we just had a non-muted person. That's all right, John. Keep
Sorry.
going.
So I asked the group, like, what would be one thing that you would like to try and improve upon? And they said, well, I'd like to be able to do a handwritten note. I was like, cool, let's try a couple strategies. Go ahead and pull out a piece of paper. We'll do a test, retest. Go ahead and write with your hand and your favorite pen a 15-word sentence. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't even have to be good grammar. Just go ahead and write something down. And then we did some rub and scrub of the elbow, of the hand. We did some slapping. So we changed the activation to stimulate the skin. Then we did some vestibular stuff, turning the head up and down. And then I said, now go ahead and write again. 100% of all the people that did that wrote with greater clarity. They wrote faster. And most importantly, they recognized their own handwriting. Emotional response. People were crying on the call. So that's where we knew, like, okay, now we've got to create these little toolkits for people that involve these things so that these little skill sets can be like your hammer or your wrench or your socket set. So whatever strategy that you learn and it connects with you, then you've got it for life, because you're always going to remember that now, right? If you improved your handwriting and it was something as simple as slap my arm, shake my hand, tip my head to the side, and it made me make my day easier because I can leave a handwritten note for my husband, you're golden, right? So a lot of these strategies have been shaped over time, but mostly because we talk to the people that are afflicted with particular conditions, say, what do you need to improve in your life and why? And then we think about movement as the strategy or the medicine to create little things that help people move and negotiate their life a little bit easier. So I hope that answered your question, Randy.
Yeah, thanks, John. This is great. So yeah, keep the questions coming in the chat. We're going to touch on those here just at the end of the presentation. I'm going to just pop through these last few slides because I want to kind of just round out what we're doing here at 7 Movements. And then we just want to get into discussion because that's where all the magic happens anyways. So let me just pop back into the presentation here. So the power of movement snacking lies in the consistency, right? So when someone's doing a movement snacking program with 7 movements, for example, they're doing one of 2 versions of a program. They're either getting 7 1-minute daily movement snacks to do throughout the day, or they're getting a 7-minute movement snack that they're doing multiple times throughout the day. So when someone's participating in a program like our 7 1-minute snacks throughout the day, and they're doing it consistently, you can imagine the amount of variation and types of movements that they're going to do over a 30-day period. It's incredible. And the impact becomes exponential. So the power is always in the consistency. So the way we deliver this really at 7 Movements, and I'll share with this group, when we first started 7 Movements, we thought we were going to build an app to deliver our intervention. And that was going to be how we would sort of share this with the world. And over the last 6 months, I spoke to about 50 or 60 of our top users on our platform. And I said, listen, like, what more can we do for you? And they said to us, to a person, they said, I want to speak to an exercise professional. I want to talk to someone who will tell me what I need to do and which program to start with. So we actually recently opened up our 7 Movements virtual clinical studio. And within that studio, we deliver virtual one-on-one support, virtual one-on-one programming. On-demand programming still exists. So you can think either self-guided experience or a guided experience with one of our exercise professionals. And within that clinical studio, you can imagine a few different doorways, one for medical exercise, one for successful aging. We work with nurses and firefighters and occupational specific movements for movement snacking. Because movement snacking can impact so many populations, we had to find a way that we could deliver it in a unique setting. So our virtual clinical studio is where you can kind of come and find either access to, like I say, our self-guided programs where you just sign up and start movement snacking throughout your day, following John and our other coaches in their videos, or you can have a consult with an exercise professional who will guide you into a program. So a great example of this is someone with Parkinson's comes to our virtual studio, and we have a Parkinson's program. It's designed specifically for people with that disease. We built it in conjunction with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. But in talking with one of our exercise professionals, we find out they're actually trying to do some strength training stuff. Like, that's their goal. They're actually moving around pretty well, and they want to do, so we might move them on. We'll say, hey, like, don't start at our Parkinson's program, start with our Viper Pro program that John built for our community. So this is how we deliver our content. And I just wanted to touch on our philosophical approach to all of this, whether we're working with a facility in Ontario where we're designing their wellness or gym facility for their nurses and caregivers, or you're just thinking about how you can create an environment in your home that's going to allow you to participate in more movement throughout the day. We take a 3E approach, we call it. One is education. It's stuff like this that we do. It's, hey, why should I movement snack? What's actually happening when I do the rub and scrub? Oh, that's really cool. Understanding what's happening with the nervous system, understanding the physiology of movement, that's important. The second piece here is environment, designing spaces and workflows. So we were approached about, I guess, a year ago to help design a facility for caregivers or nurses in a long-term care facility in Ontario, Canada. And I know when they approached us, they said, hey, we want to build a gym for our nurses so they can work out. And John right away said, no, that's not what they need. Your shift workers coming off a 12-hour shift don't need to go work out in a gym. They need a place where they can come and get some movement that's going to make them feel better before they go home or before they go into shift. So building spaces that are intentional and allow us to apply this movement snacking methodology to build it throughout their day. You can imagine a facility with movement snacking stations within it where someone can pop and grab a quick movement snack before they go out for their daily walk. And that movement snack's designed to help them prepare for that walk, make their feet feel good and their back feel good or their shoulders feel good. The third E is always enablement for this. For us, we deliver this through a lot of technology, but we also deliver it through our education program where we certify 7 Movements health leaders, become the knowledge keepers of people who are in their care and be able to like teach them how to build movement snacks into their day. We used to get hung up on our technology and our app a lot. Like, we thought that was a thing everybody needed in order to do this. It's not. It's the resource. It's one tool that we can deliver our programming through. What we find is this wholehearted 3E approach is what helps people build the behavior, sustain the behavior, and actually make really, really successful changes within their either organization, facility, or like even their home. Your environment's important. Where can you grab a movement snack in your home today? Is it set up for you to be able to do it? So we have a new vision for facilities. Imagine a facility with movement snacking stations as common as hand sanitizer dispensers, right? Where could they exist? How could they help the populations that are living within them? How can we train the staff to not only use movement snacking to take care of their own health, their own brain health, their own physiological health, and then downstream effects of that on teaching their residents to move, all of a sudden the culture shifts, right? That's our real goal. So our engagement model, you can kind of think of it as twofold. One, the map, self-guided daily programs, the guide, one-on-one coaching, right? So I just wanted to explain really quick how it works with us, right? So a lot of people come see us, they just want a self-guided program. Hey, I want to buy your Parkinson's program, start movement snacking. Fantastic, do that. If you need guidance, need to know where to start, we have a $50 consultation. You speak with one of our exercise professionals. They say, you should start at this program. This is where you should start. And then we allow you to pay or to apply that $50 against the program that you purchase. So curiosity is always the first step. I hope we've sparked some curiosity in you today to start thinking about movement a little bit better. Eric, I don't know if you want to announce the partnership we have with the AmFast community now. I can let you do that, but thank you for having us in, and let's get the questions rolling, because that's really what I want to start chatting on.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I think just the few little examples of actionable strategies in your philosophy and the way to do it has been amazing. And it makes me really excited to let everybody know what we've been working on behind the scenes, because we're trying to add so much more value for all of our AmFast members and people that are professionals also participating in the person-centered review program, where we can support people in assisted living, skilled nursing, memory care, etc. And what we have put together, I just am even more excited about after today. Can you guys imagine an opportunity to come and talk to John or Dan and to ask a question in office hours? Can you imagine if you have an assisted living community and you could bring a resident with Parkinson's disease to office hours in the AmFast community, and you could say, hey, what do we do here? What if you had an activity professional that could bring some residents and ask some questions and try some specific movement snacks based on their situation? What if you're supporting a spouse at home? Or what if you're trying to be more active yourself and you could log into online office hours and you could ask a guy with the expertise that John Sinclair has, what do I do here? How do I begin to get started? And you could get the kind of direct guidance that obviously you've seen today goes way beyond just reading some exercise book or some social media influencer. Wouldn't that be cool? I think it would be amazing. And I am so excited to let you know that John and Dan have agreed to partner with us and to offer online office hours once a week in the AmFast community. And we're going to make it available both for AmFast members and for PCR members, where you can come. Now, we're not going to talk about things outside of exercise in those office hours. It's specific to physical movement, microdosing, all the kinds of things that we're talking about today. But these guys know way more about dealing with some of the physiological nuances here than I do. And I am so excited that we get to bring this to people. Now, they're also going to have resources like this masterclass available in our community. But some of the programs that they have, if someone has specific needs that really go kind of beyond what you could do in office hours, they have lots of tools and resources. And if you're feeling like there's a need for those tools and resources, then by virtue of the fact that you have an AmFast membership, you're going to get 25% off what they offer in 7 Movements Health. So as we continue to add value to what it means to be a member of A Mind for All Seasons, we want to add opportunities where you can get preferred pricing with some of the tools and things that would really support you on your health journey or for the people that you serve. And you just get more value because you have a membership here. So I'm excited about that. Dan and John, what would you add to this as far as what we're going to do and our vision for all this?
Yeah, honestly, I think we're just really jazzed to be partnering with an organization like this with amazing people that you clearly have on the call here today. And like this is you speak to the community, the people that we're trying to serve as well. So we're just honored and excited to be a part of a movement that's trying to really make an impact in this space. And yeah, we love jamming on exercise. So we're just excited about office hours. John will be there. We love getting into the weeds. We love talking about complex cases and all of that stuff as it relates to exercise. So I know John's chomping at the bit and really excited to dive into that. And I see we got some questions in the chat here. This is like where we like, if we could have just had the whole session today, just Q&A and just getting excited about that, we would have done that. So yeah, let's dive in to some of these questions. And if you have more, drop them in the chat or raise your hand in the call here, and let's dive in right now. Is that cool, Eric?